It's a pleasure to be joining here in ECQI 22 with our presentation on feminist arts-based interactivist methodology for addressing gender and power in young peer cultures. I want to start by briefly telling about our team behind this presentation. This here is our core team of the FIRE Research Collective, and these here are the co-authors of this presentation: Evelina Puutio, Suvi Pihkala, Helena Louhela, and Tuija Huuki from Gender Studies at the University of Oulu in Finland. FIRE Research Collective is a group of researchers inspired by arts-based and new materialist methodologies that collaborates closely with artists, children and young people, educators and NGOs to investigate gendered and sexual injustices in and around education. This is what FIRE stands for: Feminist, Interactivist, Response-Able Educational Research. Gendered and sexual injustices, including sexual harassment, is a challenge that affects children's everyday lives in manifold ways. These here are cards and statements written by 10 to 12-year-old children in little strips of paper as part of our research. When asked about what feels bad in their peer relations and what they'd like to see change, children have written, for example, "If a boy fancies me, why does he hit me? Boys are more than just tough guys. I've been called gay. Don't call me a slut." From research we know that gender, sexuality and power creates complex mix of pains, pleasures and ambivalences in children's everyday peer relations that materializes also as gendered and sexual injustices, harassment, sexual and gender-based violence, abuses of power based on heteronormativity. We also know that too often research and pedagogical praxis on gender and power is based on normative, adult-led assumptions of gender and sexuality in children's lives, and that too often children navigate the troubles and joys of friendship and emerging relationship cultures reliant on peers and media representations only. To do responsible research on gendered and sexual injustices with children, our aim has been to develop methodology for exploring and addressing gender and power in peer cultures with children co-productively and in a way that can make a difference. For doing so, we have drawn inspiration from feminist new materialist and posthuman theories, as well as creative methodologies. The aim of this presentation is to elaborate on this methodology and to offer example of how new materialisms can be put to work in creative praxis when engaging with children to address gender, sexuality and power. Drawing inspirational thinking with new materialisms, particularly works of scholars such as Karen Barad, Rosi Braidotti and Erin Manning, has meant for us attention to the more than human relationality and the interaction of human and other than human bodies in constituting things and issues, and in constituting possibilities for change. Connecting to educational scholars inspired by these feminist new materialists, our research is framed also by the idea of responsibility. As discussed by Donna Haraway and Karen Barad, this refers to the always already ethical imprint of our material engagement within the world. It captures the ways practices of knowledge making are constitutive of the world they investigate, calling us to account for the materializing effects of our practices and calling us to use our ability to respond. This ethical onto-epistemology, to follow Barad, is put to work in our co-productive creative workshops with children that combines arts-based and activist methods. The aim is to investigate the pains and pleasures of gendered peer cultures with children, to work with those experiences productively, and to communicate children's resistance to oppressive practices and their transformative visions for other children, educators, policymakers, and wider public. From the range of creative interventions we've carried out since the latter half of 2010s, and in which more than 200 children have participated over the years, In this presentation, we zoom in on our recent work, called Friendship Workshops, to illustrate what our work looks like and how new materialisms have been put to work in our praxis. Friendship workshops are school-based, 2-day workshops carried out by our multi-professional team of researchers and collaborating artists, as well as a media producer. Children's participation is organized in cooperation with the class teacher and school administration. Children participate in the workshops as part of their school days and with their school class. Participation is always voluntary and based on ongoing negotiation of consent. The design of the workshops is underpinned by an idea of intra-activist assemblages, which, taking inspiration from E.J. Reynolds and Jessica Ringrose, combines Barad's agental realism with Proudhotti's affirmative politics. The idea of intra-activist assemblages guides our work towards composing multi-agental assemblages for children to engage experience in ways that accounts for the sensitivity at stake when exploring gender, sexuality and power, while taking seriously the need to address gendered and sexual injustice and tapping onto the pedagogical, political, effective and activist potential of arts-based and creative practice for doing so. And what this then means in the actual material design and composition of our workshops. First, this intra-activist methodology is put to work when designing the space of the workshops. The space where the workshops takes place is carefully and purposefully designed to steer making and spark imagination. The workshops are organized in a rented multi-room facility that has been decorated for different effective atmospheres through materials, colors, lighting and soundscape, as the images from different rooms here capture. The space is charged also with topics of the workshops. The walls are covered with artworks by children from our previous workshops addressing similar issues. They form a continually reconfiguring collage of a kind. The space, in short, is more than a backdrop for making. Attention to the effective materiality of the space puts to work new materialist affirmative gesture in the vitality of matter following Jane Bennett, and the capacity of the multi-agental interactive dynamism of forces as artworks, the space and the human and other than human bodies of the space reconfigure conditions of possibility for thinking and steer the making towards the topics at hand. In the arts-based practice of friendship workshops, children's peer cultures are approached through reiterations of creative, talk-based and embodied activities that allow the phenomena to be approached without assuming where the process might lead. Drawing on the idea of enabling constraints, the aim is to compose conditions where the issues at hand are approached little by little through different angles and with varying modalities of making. We start with orientational activities such as line drawing in the picture on the left that helps children settle into the space. Activities are intentionally selected to allow the phenomena to be approached in different ways. We might, for example, explore anonymous experiences and thoughts written by other children, and then write our own thoughts down and collect those in class jars. In craft activities such as relationship knots or puzzles of friendships, children get to work with their experiences through colors and symbols and through diverse craft materials. Part of our work is also to explore those things that children would like to relay for others through activist statements. This is what we do in digital animations, where movement and bright-colored text amplify children's messages. Towards the end of the 2 days, activities such as crafting friendship dreamlands allow space to imagine ethically sustainable alternatives for peer cultures. These activities that we work with during the 2 days form 3 iterative cycles for articulating experiences, voicing resistance, and envisioning ethical alternatives. Approaching gendered and sexual injustices this way orients towards working co-productively in ways where each interactive iteration of thinking-making holds the potential for what Erin Manning calls minor gestures, subtle variations, subtle shifts. During the iterative arts making, capacitating minor gestures is about addressing the what else activating the not yet, and becoming more than. The underpinning idea is that the careful composing of the materiality and making can afford ethically enabling conditions. Such conditions account for the sensitivity and unsafety present when working creatively with experiences of gendered and sexual peer cultures. Yet they aim to do so without blocking the affirmative capacity of creative praxis to disrupt habitual ways of knowing and being, and their capacity to generate alternative ethical becomings. At the core of the friendship workshops is the aim of enabling and striving towards change in the micro-processes with children, as well as in the wider educational debate. It is here where the diffractive processes from the friendship workshops generate for us an invitation to use our ability to respond. This takes us from considering what things and issues are and what they do to what we can do with their doings, such as, for example, the doings of those paper strips that have accumulated over the course of our work with children, and a few of which were seen in the pictures before. The result in this case of the paper strips is an artwork called Statements on Wood. It is a co-produced artwork currently in the making, and in the making actually in this image here. Here children are plastering paper notes of children's hopes and desires related to safe peer cultures into this large plywood. Statements on wood will then be exhibited in public spaces and school lobbies to remind of the need to commit to support healthy, safe and positive peer relations. In addition to artworks such as Statements on Wood, exploring productive and responsible ways of doing with the doings of creative processes, we are also developing pedagogical resources for educators and teacher education to ignite wider processes of change and to nourish ethically enabling conditions also in those worlds of schooling and peer cultures where the children, after their 2 days with us, eventually venture off to. It is here where the interactivating capacity of arts making turns into activism, engagement, and impact work. Kindling positive peer relations and making research matter is based on careful and purposeful composing of materiality, space, and art making so that the compositions would enable children to explore and communicate matters of young peer cultures in safe and sustainable ways. Such ethically enabling conditions work to allow space for minor gestures, and they demand ongoing responsiveness from us. That is, that we continually seek ways of using our ability to respond by moving with children's experiences, artistic creations, and the effects that the workshops evoke. Our work with the methodology is ongoing, but we hope that the friendship workshops offers one practical example of how new materialisms can be put to work when planning creative workshops and when engaging with children on sensitive topics. To learn more of this work, you can visit our website, where we have collected examples of children's creative productions and also a short video from the friendship workshops and lots more. If you have any questions or want to learn more, we look forward to hearing from you. On behalf of our team, thank you.